Should you wear a lifting belt for hypertrophy? The main purpose of a lifting belt is to increase intra-abdominal pressure, which is just a sciencey term to say that it makes your core more stable, and therefore it makes you stronger. Because the compound movements require more stability, and therefore you need to brace harder, and the belt helps you brace harder. They help you keep tighter. When you put that thing on, you offer your body more stability, and more spine stability. Because when you brace, your abs will have something to push against of the belt. It will also reduce the stress on your lower back, which in turn will help you push with your desired muscles, like your legs for example on a squat. Because the belt will help you stay more upright on a squat, and you won't do those good morning squats that you see people do. Which will help you to use your legs more, which will make you stronger, which will make your legs bigger. That's kind of the general idea of a lifting belt. But there are some caveats to this. The belt is not necessarily the right choice every time. And when people talk about the drawbacks of lifting belts, they usually say that they don't feel their abs when they put a belt on, and that their abs stop working when they do that. But other people say that that's the complete opposite, that their abs actually work more when they use a belt. And you could try to see how it is, but in my opinion a lifting belt won't hinder your ab progress. There might be a small difference, but like I said, some people feel their abs more with a lifting belt. But you're not doing compounds for the abs anyways, so that doesn't really matter, you should isolate your abs anyways. One thing about the lifting belt though is that it will take time to adjust to it. It's a skill, just like any other lifting accessory. Just because you know that you'll be stronger with a lifting belt, that doesn't mean that you should put more pounds on the bar. Actually, the first time you do it, you might actually be weaker, because you're not used to the feeling of the belt. So if you wanna start using it, I'd recommend you to keep the same weight and keep some reps in the tank, just to be safe. And over time, after a couple of weeks of getting used to the belt, you'll actually get stronger, yes. But you'll have to get used to it, so don't jump straight into the big weights. The belt won't magically make you lift 1,000 pounds. And like I said, if you don't brace properly, the belt is pretty much useless. There is still some support for the lower back, yes, but it won't create that intra-abdominal pressure that we want. I made a video about bracing, but basically you need to push your belly outwards when you breathe in, before every rep to keep tight. And you'll see that if you do it correctly, your belt will be pushed outwards when you breathe in, and you'll feel more pressure. So does the belt help? Yes, but there are some pros and cons with it. Let me get first into the pros. You'll get slightly more gains, because you can move more weight, and more quality weight, because you're pushing with the actually intended muscle. But you would have gotten those gains anyways, you're just a couple of months or maybe even a couple of weeks stronger. Another pro is just the fact that you'll be more confident with the weight. When you have a belt on, you kinda know that you're a bit safer than without a belt on. And with that extra confidence, now you might be able to push harder, maybe even grind more. I think that for a lot of people, it's just good to know that you have some extra support. Even though a belt won't save you from an injury, it does give you extra support, yes. Another one is that your lower back might feel better, especially if you got heavy knee flexions and heavy hip hinges all in the same session. If you've just done some heavy back squats and now you're moving into Romanian deadlifts, your lower back might not feel super good. And your lower back might be too fatigued for your Romanian deadlifts and your performance will suffer. So you can eliminate that problem just by using a belt on your back squats. Another pro is the fact that if you have a lower back injury, it might help you with that and relieve some of the pain, so that you can actually squat, or deadlift or whatever you wanna do with the belt. And the last pro that I thought about, I know there are probably more, is the fact that your lower back will activate less, maybe. Some people find out that their lower back actually activates more when using a lifting belt. But most people will see that their lower back activates way less. Which can be a pro if you're too fatigued, like I said in the example before. But it can also be a con. Most people these days worry too much about optimal exercises and how they can take their lower back out of certain exercises and things like that. That can be good, but that can also be very bad. Compounds are compounds for a reason, because they train more muscles. If you do everything chest supported or use a belt on everything, your other muscles might suffer. So don't use a belt on everything, and definitely don't use a belt on your warm-ups. And don't use a belt just because it is easier. It might be easier in the moment, but after some years of using the belt every single session, you'll realize that you'll have some weak points. Another con is the fact that your core stability will be weaker. Like I said, if you rely on belts all the time, when you end up doing an exercise that you don't use a belt for, your core stability will be very weak. You might just fall doing a split squat, just because you lost the ability to keep stable doing an exercise. And now you're forced to wear a belt on everything. Another con is that you'll put more pressure on the discs. You might save your lower back, but then you'll have more pressure on your discs. So don't think that just because you're using a lifting belt, now you can round your back and have a terrible form. That's not how it works, you'll still get snapped up that way. If your form is bad from the start, you should fix that before using a lifting belt. Because the belt won't save you. It might save you a couple of times, but at some point you'll still get snapped up if you use bad form. And the last con is that you'll generate more fatigue. This one is pretty obvious. If you use more weight, you'll obviously generate more fatigue. That naturally happens to everybody progresses and naturally they gain more fatigue. But by using a belt you artificially do that. But like I said before, you'll get more gains. But for someone who is super strong, using a belt might actually be worse for them because the fatigue that they generate might not be good enough to justify for the fact that they need to use a belt. So do you need a lifting belt? No. There are plenty of people who got jacked without ever using a lifting belt. It's just something that can help your training. You can try it out to see how you like it, and if you really like it, then you can use it. If you don't, then don't. But don't use it on every movement, don't rely on it. And have separate days where you use the belt and separate days where you don't use the belt. Because imagine if you forget it. If you've been squatting for years with a lifting belt and then you suddenly forget it, you won't know how to squat without it. A lifting belt is not super important, and it's one extra thing that you have to keep in mind when it comes to your training. So you're making your training more complicated for no reason really. And from a practical standpoint, a lifting belt is very big, so it can be quite difficult to put it in your gym bag. So I gave you the pros, I gave you the cons. If you really like it, use it. If you don't, then don't. A lifting belt is not a vital gym accessory. However, a vital gym accessory are lifting straps. I did make a video about lifting straps if you want to check it out, because I do believe that they're extremely useful.